We are joined today by Representative Jill Cooper. You have recently proposed a bill to eliminate displaying candidates' home counties on a primary election ballot. Why is that?
So it's something I had been thinking about for a long time. I became engaged in politics in 2008 and really went up the party side versus being elected as an elected official, which I am today. So therefore, I found myself on the ballot on the primary numerous times, whether it was for a committee position, a state committee position, or a delegate. It was always on the primary ballot, and it would list where you lived. And so it's not, it's something that I've just been thinking about for a while. And I felt that in the pursuit of fair and transparent elections, that where you lived really does not reflect your competency, your integrity, and your priorities in policy. And so I felt that it's something that we've done in the past just because we've always done that. And I felt it was time for a change.
What is the reasoning behind listing the home counties of candidates on the ballot?
I'm not really sure the history and the context, but I believe it's just something that was done back in the day before. My understanding is when there were a lot of conventions to determine who was the winner, right? And so where you lived played more of a role. Today, because of how technology is, you can find where a candidate lives at the tip of your fingertips by just Googling them. And most candidates have their hometown on their websites. It's when they're interviewed by the press, it's listed. And so the information is so much more readily available today than it was years ago. And so, in that context, I feel that it's time for us to catch up and really provide the ballot with the accurate information of the person and let voters make that decision, again, not based on where they live, but based on their policy priorities.
Is this a common thing in other states' elections or just in Pennsylvania to have the county listed?
I haven't researched the other states so much because to me, what's more important is what happens here in Pennsylvania. And it has been, it has been the law here in Pennsylvania for quite some time. And so the only two positions, if you will, that don't require you to live in your district that you're running for are congressional or the Senate seats here in Pennsylvania, right? And you have to be a resident the day that you're elected, but you can run if you don't live in those districts. And that's per the Constitution. So again, the Constitution allows for that in these specific offices. And so they don't feel that it's crucial that you're in your district. So why do we need to list that on the primary? Again, when you go to the general, there's no listing whatsoever of where you live. It's just your name and your party affiliation. But so therefore, I really think that we need to get with the times and make those changes and eliminate that going forward.
What are some issues that may arise if people were to vote strictly off of the location of the candidate as opposed to their ideals or beliefs?
Yeah, so you can have a divide between urban versus suburban. You can have an issue from east to west. Okay, I'm not voting for this person. I'm a Steeler fan and they're from Philly. If they haven't researched a candidate. And so you have different biases that can be built in based on where you live. And even for instance, in my race, which is a House race, District 55, where I live is the most populous part of my district, right? And so it could list my municipality versus a smaller municipality. And people may vote for me just because they're from the same hometown, right? And that's really not what you want. I knocked on 13,000 doors and I worked hard to earn my election. And, not because I live in the area that is most populous in my district. And so I think that it helps you to work hard. And if there's some bias based on where one person lives versus another because of the demographics or just anything like that, it is now eliminated. And so that's why I feel it's necessary, again, just to keep everything fair and transparent. We don't do it in the general. Why should we do it in the primary?
Lastly, where is this bill in the legislative process currently?
So I've recently just introduced it as a co-sponsorship memo. And so I'm about talking to my colleagues and recruiting folks to sign on. And then once I feel like I get enough legislators signed on, then I'll introduce it as a bill. It is bipartisan in that right now I do have some Democrats plus me as a Republican listed. So I'm just going to start working with my colleagues and hopefully being able to convince them that this is something that is no longer needed in today's world.
Representative Jill Cooper, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.